everybody, and welcome to the weekly scopes from the 13th to the 19th of July. Hi everybody, and welcome to this week's weekly scopes. If you've heard this before, you can skip, but this is just the intro on how I formulate these astrology weekly readings. I use astrology and my intuition to give you advice how you can practically use the knowledge of the stars and the planets and apply them to your life. So my weekly scopes are all based on GMT time and on Vedic Constellational Astrology. So now I'm just going to explain what Vedic Constellation Astrology is and how it differs from Western astrology. So the precession of the equinox is sort of like something that happens in astronomy and astrology, where the Earth's axis undergoes a slow circular motion over 26,000 years, and basically this means that this motion causes a shift in the position of the equinoxes and also the calculation Vedic and Western astrologies use. So around 2,000 years ago, the tropical and sidereal Vedic astrology signs of astrology were aligned in the same position. So if the sun was in Scorpio in Vedic astrology, it was also in the constellation of Scorpio in Western astrology. But because of the precession of the equinoxes, this has caused a gradual westward sort of like drift of the tropical Western signs. So basically these signs and the Western signs shift 1 degree with every 72 years. So as a result of this ongoing shift, when Western astrology says the sun is in the constellation of Pisces, it's typically in the constellation of Aquarius. Still, this is because the degree, orb and the date for Western and Vedic astrology are 24 degrees, 24 days apart. So in Western astrology, the sun enters the constellation of Pisces around the 19th of February each year, but actually the sun doesn't arrive into the constellation of Pisces until the 13th to the 15th of March each year. And Vedic astrology takes this into account because it's based on the fixed star positions, and Vedic astrologers use sidereal calculations. So as a result, Vedic astrology takes into account the actual positions of the constellations in the sky at any given time, and also considers the precession of the equinox, adjusting for the shift in the position of the equinoxes over time. But in terms of Western astrology follows the tropical zodiac, which is based on the seasons rather than fixed star positions. Western astrologers also do not directly account for the precession of the equinox in their calculations as well, so this results in slightly different calculations and interpretations that are given whether we're using Western astrology or Vedic astrology. So yeah, as I said, Western astrology uses specific dates. So every year, regardless of where the sun actually is at the sky, the sun moves into Pisces around the 19th of February. So yeah, this discrepancy, this misalignment between the tropical zodiac and the actual positions of the constellations has led to a discrepancy between Vedic astrology and Western astrology. So I consider the actual where the sun and the moon are and where Mars and Venus are at any given time, and this is how I formulate these sort of like weekly scopes. So yeah, thanks for listening to this, and let's dive into this week's weekly scope. Okay, so now I'm just going to explain what parallels and contra parallels are in astrology, because I use them in my chart interpretation. So declination in astrology is the measure of how far a celestial body is, such as the sun, whether it's either north or south of the celestial equator. And the celestial equator is an imaginary line in the sky above the Earth's equator, which us astrologers use in our interpretation. So parallels happen when two planets are on the same declination. Either both planets are on the north side side, or either both planets are on the south side, and this alignment increases the influence of the involved planets. So it's similar to a conjunction aspect, as it amplifies their energy, making the effects of the planets more pronounced. Contraparallels, on the other hand, happen when two planets are on the same declination, but one is in the north and one is in the south. So this alignment creates tension, which is similar to an opposition aspect, and it can lead to conflict, challenges and inner struggles between the energies of the planets involved. So contraparallels highlight areas of friction or contrast in our lives, urging us to find balance between the opposing forces at play. When transiting parallels and contraparallels happen, they can sort of like trigger significant events, shifting consciousness and periods of intense growth and transformation. So I look at these aspects closely during chart analysis to understand how planetary energies interact and influence each other during a specific time frame, to pinpoint key periods for personal development, relationship dynamics or career shifts, and other shifts like karmic shifts and stuff like that. Because I just find using contraparallels and parallels gives me more depth in interpretation, so I use them. So contraparallels and parallels in astrology serve as markers for potential challenges or breakthroughs, guiding us towards more self-awareness, love, acceptance, understanding, forgiveness for ourselves and others, and shifts in consciousness and growth. So overall, just a shift in our mindset if we allow for it. So parallels and contraparallels just kind of like provide valuable insights into the complexities and nuances of the astrological interactions between planetary movements. So yeah, that's the end of what contraparallels and parallels are. Okay, so this week we've got a few aspects controlling us, a few parallels, two to be precise. We've got Venus, well, they both involve Venus. So the first is Venus making a parallel to Uranus. Uranus is in Taurus, and so is Venus, and this entered on the 5th of July, is exact at 1:04 p.m. on the 15th of July, and it's also jacked again on the 24th of August. So influence gonna be strong and then not so strong, but ultimately this aspect is staying with us until the 2nd of September. Then we got the Sun making a parallel to Venus. Just means that the Sun, Uranus and Venus are all in the same side of the declination of the earthly realm, astrological realm, whatever. So yeah, and the Sun's in Cancer, and this entered on the 13th of July, is exact at 4:54 p.m. on the 19th of July, and leaves us on the 25th of July. So this week is what I want to call electric romance, individuality, self-projection, but in a healthy way week, as we are sort of like up against, or being influenced rather, by two powerful power aspects, and this is creating an astrological triangle of energy. As I said, we've got the Sun in Cancer and Venus and Uranus in Taurus, so we've got water and earth coming together, and we know that water lets the earth grow, right? So we're looking at a week of unexpected pleasures and creative breakthroughs in whatever energy we want to direct this in. But as always, Uranus brings unexpected events, so we may have to struggle to keep our focus, but I'm going to talk more about that step by step. So as I said, parallels work exactly like conjunctions on steroids basically, but with more of a subtle, deeper vibe. We may feel this more inward, and it highlights the unconscious patterns or experiences we need to process. process, so we can move forward or manage our life, whatever we're, concentrating on. So the fixed Taurian energy of Venus and Uranus, grounded by the emotional Cancer Sun, creates a powerful opportunity for manifesting material and emotional transformation. So it's good to work on, we're not spending but saving, reassessing our financial goals, maybe speculating, taking a gamble for some of you financially. But remember, only ever gamble what you can afford to lose. And if you have an issue, with addictive personalities, then I'm telling you not to gamble and seek help. But I'm not the karma police. You do what you want. So holistically, Venus's parallel to Uranus can trigger unexpected things happening in our relationships and finances, as I said, and unexpected connections, relationships can happen as well. The Sun's parallel to Venus really lights up, illuminates our core values, helping us to align our identity with what we truly love and want to achieve. The double Taurus energy, Venus and Uranus both being there, allows us to make practical breakthroughs in how we approach our resources, how we use them. And Cancer, the Sun being there, allows us to work on emotional validation, but in a nice grounded way, because we've got Venus and Uranus stabilizing that. And again, it places the focus on being nurturing, being empathetic and compassionate, especially when it comes with dealing with relationships, creativity and finances this week. So this combo gives us the permission to break free from stale, stagnant patterns, get outside of our emotional, financial, relationship comfort zones, right? And we don't need to give up our need for security and comfort, but we have to try and ease up on it a little bit, get out of our comfort zone a little. But ultimately, astrologically, this week is a rare have your cake and eat it moment. So we can get away with stuff, which is kind of cool. We can have our cake and eat it. We may be able to be romantic and go on lots of dates and stuff, while also stick to our routine and stay focused, because the grounding energy of Venus and Uranus is allowing us to do that. We may find ourselves attracted to unconventional beauty and suddenly valuing freedom more than stability in our relationships. But we just have to watch out for impulsive spending or investment decisions, emotional overreactions when our values are challenged, which Sun in Cancer can make us do. Relationship unpredictability, that I want freedom but also security paradox, which I know a thing or two about, and the stubborn attachment that we can get to new ideas that haven't been properly vetted, So try new things, but make sure you do your research, make a strategic plan to overcome them, And the fixed energy of Taurus can turn innovative, new, next level Uranian impulses into inflexible demands for change. And this can be the astrological equivalent, of I'm spontaneously deciding we must do this new thing forever, So making those decisions for everyone except for yourself. And it's not really, you can make decisions for yourself, but do not try and force people this week, because you can get backlash, right? So the best use of this week's energy is experiment with aesthetics on trend or personal style in the ways that feel authentic. So dye your hair, wear that makeup, experiment with your makeup, your dress, your sense of style and all that good stuff, Introduce gentle innovations, changes to your financial systems, planning and relationship patterns, and create space for both emotional security and exciting newness into the relationship. Or if you are single, look for a new partner if that's what you want to do. Or if you're self-partnered or single, date yourself, love on yourself, because we can always do that. We can't influence other people to love us, but we can make ourselves love us if we're prepared to, do the work to understand and manage our emotional, spiritual and psychological areas of our life, And we can kind kind of use technology to improve our creative expression and relationship communication. In terms of the psychological and karmic meanings from a Jungian perspective, these parallels activate our shadow relationship with security and freedom. The Venus-Uranus aspect in Taurus represents the tension between our desire for consistency and our soul's evolution towards freedom and release. Karmically, this period reflects previous lifetimes where we may have chosen security over authentic expression or vice versa, and the Sun-Venus connection illuminates and lights up this pattern, giving us a chance to integrate both our wants and needs without sacrifice, right? So spiritually and esoterically, this combination activates both our root and throat chakras. I was going to say the Vedic names, but I'm going to save that for another day, right? And we can connect material security with authentic expression, speaking our truth, having authentic self-expression, learning to accept ourselves for who we are. And the Cancer Sun adds, heart energy this week, creating a trinity, a threesome of manifestation power. So Venus rules Taurus at both the esoteric outward and esoteric levels, and Uranus is connected to Libra as it rules Libra esoterically, even though Venus also rules Libra on the esoteric outwardly, and this creates a hidden Venus pattern that magnifies our ability. So we're getting triple Venus, threesome Venus, ability to attract what we truly value and not just what we think we want, So in terms of soul searching questions, we can ask ourselves this week to help us kind of zone in on the growth we want to achieve, right? We can ask ourselves, how may your fear of either too much stability or too much change be preventing you from experiencing both security and excitement at the same time? And what small experiment could you do this week that honours both your need for comfort and your desire for innovation, newness, Perhaps the universe is asking you to redefine, change what security actually means for you, so your higher consciousness and your soul can continue its growth, so yeah. So my mantras and guidance for this week are based on the majority of energies that you have in your natal chart. So some of you may have natal charts that are dominant in more than one energy. You may have your rising sign, your sun sign, and your moon sign all in different energies. You may have aspects to different planets. So ultimately this could mean you have some planets that are in fire, some in water signs, some in earth signs. So for example, if you have most of your planets in Aries, Scorpio and Capricorn, read the mantras for all of these signs. And if you have all your planets mostly in Taurus, read the mantra for Taurus, but you may also want to read for Libra because Venus rules Taurus and Libra, right? So yeah. So in terms of the mantra and guidance for this week, Aries, the Tyrant Sun square on the 19th activates your core identity wounds, demanding you face where you have been sacrificing assertiveness for the comfort of others. Jupiter forming a quintile to Tyrant in your sign offers creative healing approaches that can turn your past wounds into your greatest teaching tools. With the moon entering your sign midweek, you can feel a surge and increase of emotional courage to initiate the changes your soul is calling for, Taurus, with both Venus and Uranus parallel in your sign, you're experiencing an electric awakening around values, possessions and relationships that may feel both exciting and unsettling. The Venus-Pluto sextiquadra on July 20th challenges your typical comfort-seeking tendencies, revealing where you may be clinging to security at the expense of the necessary, changes you need to make. And the moon entering your sign at the week's end, provides grounding energy to integrate these changes while still honouring your need for stability and to stay a bit in your comfort zone, Gemini, Jupiter in your sign, quintile in Chiron, creates an extraordinary opportunity to communicate healing wisdom that transforms both yourself and others. Mercury, stationary in retrograde, may, disrupt your typical typical conversational flow, but offers a deeper review of emotional communication patterns that you've inherited that may be keeping you trapped in a cycle of repeating past mistakes. So use the last quarter moon energy to release, let go of mental thought patterns that no longer serve your soul's evolution or your personal development, especially those related to how you process and express your feelings. Cancer, the sun entering your sign on the 16th increases your nurturing superpowers, but at the same time highlighting where you may be over nurturing others, at your own expense, the expense of your own psychological, emotional and spiritual well-being. And the sun Chiron square on July 19th creates tension between caring for others and asserting your own needs, but this provides the necessary friction for healing childhood patterns. Mercury retrograding through your sign invites a deep review of how you express your emotions and family related memories, right? So Leo, Mars in your sign forming a sesquiquadrate to Pluto gives you transformative willpower, but may trigger power struggles where your ego feels threatened. The last quarter moon activates your need to release creative blocks or performance anxiety that at the root cause of this is your childhood wounds around recognition, self-expression. So look into what needs still healing there or continue to be healed there, and the Venus-Uranus parallel helps you break free from, stale old patterns of self-expression, while the Sun-Venus parallel illuminates your authentic values, makes them bigger, make you tune into authentic self so you can express that more and seek the validation within rather than seek it from outside, Virgo, Mercury, your ruling planet, stationed in retrograde in emotional Cancer, requires you to revisit communication patterns within community and your friendship circles. The Jupiter Chiron quintile opens creative approaches to healing perfectionist tendencies that may have wounded your sense of belonging, while Venus forming harmonious aspects to both Saturn and Neptune. You're learning to balance practical service with compassionate acceptance for both yourself and others. Libra, your ruling planet, Venus parallel to Uranus, creates unexpected breakthroughs in relationships, particularly around balancing freedom with commitment. The Venus-Pluto sesquiquadrate intensifies power dynamics in partnerships, revealing where control issues stem from deeper fears of vulnerability. The Sun-Venus parallel on July 19th helps you, reconcile, bring together, unite, integrate your need for harmony with your authentic values, allowing for less people-pleasing and genuine connections that don't sacrifice your own needs. So finding the balance between meeting the needs of others and your own needs is the key for this week for you. Scorpio, with Venus making a sesquiquadrate to Pluto, which is your ruler, right? Transformation in values and relationships, and for some of you, your finances becomes unavoidable, particularly around possessiveness and control dynamics. The North Node's directional shifts highlight your karmic lessons around sharing power versus maintaining independence, and Mars forming a tense aspect to Pluto gives you incredible regenerative energy, but requires channeling intensity constructively rather than destructively, Sagittarius, with your ruler Jupiter forming a quintile to Chiron, creates inspired approaches to healing through adventure, higher learning and cross-cultural connections. The Saturn retrograde asks you to review where you've been avoiding responsibility through excessive optimism or restlessness, and the last quarter moon offers a release point for philosophical beliefs that have outlived their usefulness in your spiritual evolution. hasten, your growth, Capricorn, with Pluto in your sign, receiving challenging aspects from both Mars and Venus this week. Your power structures, your routines, your habits, especially those that resolve around your identity, your self-expression, and how you relate to yourself and others, may undergo necessary dismantling, breaking down this week. Saturn, your ruler, is stationed in retrograde, so this demands a review of your boundaries and commitments, particularly where you have been inflexible, rigid, rather than being flexible, right? And Venus's quintile to Saturn offers creative ways to mix discipline with pleasure, allowing you to work smarter, not harder this week. Aquarius, the moon transiting your sign early in the week brings emotional focus to your unique perspectives and beliefs and humanitarian vision, the way you view humanity, the way you want to interact or give back for some of you, And Venus's parallel to your modern ruler, Uranus, creates electric connections and unexpected financial insights that align with your progressive values. The Saturn retrograde, and Saturn is your traditional ruler or co-ruler. I see it's the co-ruler of your sign and also the co-ruler of Capricorn, but anyway, so Saturn retrograde requires you to review where you've been becoming too detached or too conformist, people pleasing too much, following the crowd, not being unique, which Aquarius energy wants you to do, or too detached, wanting to stay as far away from the crowd as you can and not being tapped into humanity at all. So we must find a balance between these two expressions, because being too detached and being too conformist, following everybody else, blocks your authentic self-expression and innovation and newness, right? Pisces, with both Saturn and Neptune in your sign, receiving quintiles from Venus this week, you're experiencing a rare creative merging of material reality and spiritual vision. The Pisces moon midweek activates your psychic receptivity, making dream work and intuitive guidance particularly powerful. Mercury retrograde in your fellow water sign, Cancer, deepens your emotional understanding but may temporarily cloud communication in creative projects and matters of the heart, So your one-line mentors this week are Aries, my wounds aren't weaknesses, they're source of my most authentic power and wisdom. Taurus, I can be open to exciting change while still honouring my need for security and pleasure. Gemini, my communication becomes healing when I speak from both intellect and emotional truth. Cancer, I nurture myself with the same devotion I offer others, creating boundaries from love, not fear. Leo, true recognition comes when I transform performance into authentic self-expression. Virgo, perfection isn't found in flawlessness but in accepting the beauty of the process. Libra, relationships thrive, do well when I value authenticity over harmony and truth over peace. Scorpio, I release control to gain the deeper power of genuine intimacy and trust. Sagittarius, my optimism becomes wisdom when I integrate life's lessons rather than escaping them. Capricorn, success isn't measured by achievement but by the integrity with which I build my life. And Aquarius, my uniqueness serves humanity best when I remain connected to my emotions. And Pisces, I honour both my spiritual vision and my earthly responsibilities as equal expressions of divine purpose. So in terms of the content you should create this week, or the content you should listen to more or read more of this week, content that explores, new next level beauty hacks. Venus in Taurus with Uranus there too wants us to explore unconventional beauty approaches with practical applications. How can we apply these hacks into our life in a healthy and ethical way, In terms of content about how we can change our financial life, content about technological disruptions in finance, crypto, AI investing, and make sure when you're doing this content you tell people to never gamble or risk more than they can afford to lose, and do it in an ethical way. Focus on security and value, and taking content that helps you do that as well. In terms of content, it's the perfect time to discuss or listen to content that talk about breaking relationship patterns, especially toxic ones, and how we can maintain emotional security while, glowing up our relationships, changing them, and especially, changing the way we relate to ourselves. So there's a great podcast. I like This Jungian Life. I like that podcast. It obviously has a Jungian stance, and if you listen to my astrology, I take that stance in a way. I believe in a holistic way to healing. So yeah, just listening or creating content that's holistic, and it centers around how we can become better individuals, so we can have better relationships with others. In terms of content that can help us improve our self-care, maybe talking about or researching apps that can help you manage your self-care, because I am on the middle ground with technology. I believe it's good when used in balance and excess. Read that book and listen to the podcast. See balance, the old meeting the new, right? So content around how we can allow the old to meet the new, how we can become more selective about the apps and social media content that we consume, especially with tools that say they improve our emotional, psychological and spiritual well-being. Also content that focuses on how we can practice being more mindful of our body and its needs, and meeting them with the right sleep, the right eating patterns, the right exercise patterns, and so on. How we can bring a little bit of lux, because there we have to be eco-conscious, but we can have a bit of luxury, sustainable luxury, so content that talks about sustainable luxury, how we can indulge in an eco-conscious way and consume things in an ethical way, that feels both innovative and nurturing to not only ourselves but the planet, right? Because we need that. I'm a great believer in, you use it and pass it on, and if we all do that, there'd be less stuff in the landfill and we'd all be happy, because everybody would have the chance to have a bit of lutz. But I am a bit utopic, but let's carry on. Also content where art and creativity meets technology, right? So talking about NFTs, digital art with emotional sort of like resonance, how technology can help our creative expression. Ultimately, for maximum engagement this week, focus on content that balance excitement with comfort, and content that have a sort of emotional aspect to it, and helps us to have those emotional, psychological and spiritual breakthrough moments where we're like, aha, I know exactly what I need to do to change, right? So you can ask your audience where they've been playing it too safe in their life with their creativity and relationships, and how they can get out of that. And you can ask yourself these questions too. Also, what small exciting change could you introduce into your life that would still honour your need for security and comfort, but bring newness and excitement into your life? Ultimately, this week is all about finding the sweet spot between revolution and stability, which is perfect for motivating meaningful conversations in your family, community, so yeah. So now I'm just going to break down each day of this week and astrological transits that are happening and how they add to this week's main aspects. So on the 13th of July, we've got Saturn going retrograde. Yay or nay? Yay. Okay, I'm going to do a separate audio for this. And for those who have been listening to me for a while, from now on, the only specials I'm going to do each month, which every time it happens. So Mars changes every 6 to 8 weeks, so I'm going to do a special on that. Any retrograde, Saturn, Mercury, so Mercury retrogrades 3 times a year, Neptune, Uranus, Pluto, and solstices and equinox and new moons and full moons every month, and also solar eclipses. But I will no longer be doing the movements of Mercury, the Sun and Venus individually anymore. I'm just going to cover them all in this weekly scope. So yeah, okay. So on the 13th of July, Saturn makes a retrograde at 5 4:08 a.m. and as I said, I'm going to do separate audio about that. The moon enters Aquarius at 2:24 p.m. today. So when Saturn goes retrograde and starts its apparent backward dance, because remember, retrogrades are just the optical illusion, but astrologically it just means that the energy of that sign or point, like North Node, just turns a bit more inward. So this is an astrological review time, a powerful moment that signals a period where karmic lessons intensify and the structural elements of our life demand reassessment. Saturn retrograde isn't just throwing shade, it's asking us to go deep in our responsibilities and really vibe check ourselves. Do you really want the things you say you want? Do you really want to be famous? Do you really want to be a doctor? Do you really want to be a teacher? Do you really want to be an athlete, a musician, a writer? If so, what are you prepared to change in your lifestyle? Because Saturn is all about, yes, you can have what you want, but you need to be disciplined and routine. If you want to train to be a medical doctor, it's about 10 years of study. Are you prepared to do those long nights of study, to have a nice sleep routine, exercise routine, and all the other things you need to do in your life, which for some of you, a lot of the time, the people we associate with, the relationships you choose to have in our life, I've been there, can stop us from moving on, so Saturn is giving us that vibe check, that reality check on what do you really want and what are you prepared to do it. So this retrograde is perfect for fixing structural routine weaknesses in our life that you've been ignoring. Saturn retrograde gives us that energy to find the glitch in the matrix and fix the glitch in your matrix, right? Allowing you essentially to spot where you've been playing yourself, because I believe, yes, people can irritate us, but most people play themselves the most, get in the way of their own highest potential the most, So negatively, this pressure feels heavy. It's a very heavy, restrictive energy that can just keep on throwing obstacle in your life, especially if you've got this in your chart, as well. So it wants us to look inward, but it can trigger feelings of us not being good enough, not being worthy, and also it's imposter syndrome, self-sabotage, and time can just feel like it's moving in slow motion, right? So the best use of this energy is to overcome the adversities and challenges that it brings your way, review your personal boundaries and commitments and routines and adulting responsibilities, fix what's broken in your foundation. Foundation is your routine, your lifestyle, before building higher. The universe is giving you a chance to edit, review your life's blueprint and make the necessary changes so you can glow up. And the moon entering Aquarius is allowing us, amplifying this energy, right, as our emotional compass points us towards our collective consciousness and innovative new next level thinking in our own mindset as well. So it brings a detached but humanitarian approach to our emotional world and feelings. It improves our emotional intelligence, and we may feel drawn to perspectives and progressive, new, fresh ideas and solutions to problems, squad goals, as the youth call it, or, family goals, relationship goals, whatever, community goals become more important than your own personal feelings. So it's good for group work and all of that, but try not to fall into people pleasing. Negatively, our emotions can go into robot mode, and this detached energy can make us seem aloof or disconnected from our heart center when other people need warmth and all of that. The best use of this energy is to connect with our community, brainstorm ideas and experiment with new approaches to emotional situations. So ultimately, it's a perfect time for group healing and healing your shadow and light personality traits, the good and bad, the strengths and weaknesses. You can ask yourself, where in your life are you holding on to outdated routines, habits and relationships that no longer serve you and your authentic vision or your highest potential, review your responsibilities and allow the Aquarian moon energy draw you towards, your future self, and ask yourself, are you ready to rebuild with intention rather than habit? And Saturn is in retrograde for the next 3 to 4 months, so the slow and steady progress is good enough. On the 14th of July, the moon enters its disseminating moon phase at 1:48 p.m. and it's sort of like a gentle waning, reducing energy, where the illumination that you may have received during the full moon, the insight, the universe is now tapping on your shoulder saying, so what are you going to do with all that wisdom? What are you going to do with the wisdom and the insights that you may have got during the full moon? In terms of spiritual significance and practical applications, it's a good time for teaching others and sharing knowledge, as this activates our 10th house, so in your natal chart, if you've got planets there, look at the planets and any aspects to that house, and this can give you insight in what you need to take responsibility for. Our words can carry extra weight right now, so it's perfect for presentations or important conversations. It can allow us, and we can start seeing results from the seeds that we've planted in March, April, May, starting to take root, and seeds that we planted during the new moon can also come to fruition, ripen, you can start seeing touchable results from these now. It asks us to start identifying what needs letting go of gently, so think bad habits, situationships that ain't serving. So a lot of planets this week is focusing on what do we need to change to improve our life and become more in balance, right? So ultimately this phase, we essentially in our astrological influencer era, it can have ripple effects across our karmic path in different areas of our life. We can ask ourselves, what wisdom have I gained since the full moon, or from your life in general, that you can share with others to help them improve and maybe help heal yourself as well. And how can you package this knowledge in a way that actually helps other level up their lives rather than just performing vulnerability or performance, without just staying on the surface in sharing the knowledge without going deep. This energy wants us to go deep. On the 15th of July, the moon's north node goes direct at 11:40. Venus makes a semi-square to Chiron at 12:08. Venus's parallel to Uranus is exact at 1:05. The moon enters void of course at 6:10 p.m. Then the moon enters Pisces just over an hour later at 7:28 p.m. So Venus's semi-square to Chiron happens when Venus is in Taurus and Chiron's in Aries, and the moon's north node direct allows us, and it gives us the green light to go ahead with the things that we sort of may have self-reflected on that we need to change, right? So it can give us a clearer vision of our future path, that thing you've been manifesting or thinking about manifesting. The universe is finally entering your DMs and saying, yes, go for it, giving you that energy to move forward. So expect, synchronicities, opportunities that feel like astrological breadcrumbs leading you towards your dharma, your highest path, For some of you, it can just give you that level up moment, but negatively, this intensified karmic pressure, because Rahu's, the north node energy, can feel overwhelming when stationary direct, like remembering a massive assignment is due tomorrow, so just try and chill out a bit, do the things to pace yourself and relax. Set intentions aligned with your highest growth, and take a quantum leap into your next chapter if you feel like doing so, but keep on taking some time out if you just feel like the time isn't right for you yet to bring those changes in. But ask yourself, are you just procrastinating, or do you really need more time to move forward? So Venus makes a semi-square to Chiron at 12:08 p.m. so this is a tense aspect, right, between comfort loving Taurus and wounded healer Chiron in Aries, you know. So we have to find and maintain and manage the delicate balance, sensitive balance, you know, between unconventional approaches to love, giving and receiving it, and healing our wounds around our identity, self-expression, you know. And it can create a friction point between how you connect with others and your deepest vulnerabilities around self-expression, you know. So it's great for finding creative healing techniques to help you manage your emotional, psychological and spiritual wounds and instability right now. It wants us to turn our trauma into art, into something creative, so writing, singing, dancing or whatever else that can help you let out your emotions, you know. We may feel suddenly like an increase in awareness in how our past relationships, disappointments have shaped our unique value system and have changed it for the worse or for the better, you know. Or we may just decide to let the past go, you know, or continue or start the work to do so. Starting with connecting and committing, yeah, that's the right word, committing to building a lifelong love affair with yourself, you know. Negatively, uncomfortable awareness of how your attachment style clashes with your need for individuality, painful conversations that expose where you've been playing small in relationships, you know, may make you rethink your relationships, or where you have made someone else feel small or not important and it's just been toxic, you know. So it can be a very painful time right now on our attachment styles and how we may depend or codependent on others gets in the way of us taking responsibility for ourselves, you know. So the best use of this energy is confront relationship wounds through community and friendship, maybe find healing groups rather than isolation, but for some of you, solitude, spending time on your own is what's needed, especially if you're codependent or people pleaser, you know. So consider how your unique perspectives on things can help others with similar wounds heal as well. Ultimately, with the North Node going direct and Venus, you know, forming challenging aspects today with Chiron and Venus, the universe is pushing us to break free from old relationship patterns that no longer serve our soul's growth, you know. We can ask ourselves, is there a wound around self-expression that's actually your gateway to creating a more authentic relationship with yourself and others? Because a lot of the time we can get stuck in the negative of things rather than seeing how can we grow from this, how can we transmute this, how can we transmute sadness into happiness. And it can be done, it can take a while, but it can be done, you know. And we can ask ourselves, how can the dreamy Pisces moon help us access the intuitive guidance needed to deal with these karmic and other changes, you know. And the moon in Pisces is all about being more open to our emotions, right, and physically receptive, but we just need to watch out for ignoring red flags and, you know, escaping into excessive drug and alcohol use and stuff like that. There's the dark side of Neptune energy, right, which rules Pisces, is that we can just escape at all costs as well, and secrets can come out that you don't want to come out, so you want to escape and numb yourself to any painful experiences. And sometimes, you know, we want to be deluded and fall into illusion and ignore those red flags because we don't want to deal with reality. So just watch out for that. Try and not allow your emotional boundaries to become foggy, you know. We can have a higher vulnerability to energy vampires right now, and decision making can get difficult right now as well, and seeing things clearly. So if you're affected by that, you know, meditate, journal, connect with water, practice divination, or engage in creative visualization, or in anything else that in a healthy way allows you to relax and chill out a bit, you know. On the 16th of July, the Sun enters Cancer at 1:03 p.m. So it's like, you know, the astrological Papa and Mama Bear is diving into the emotional waters of Cancer, you know, and the Sun leaves, you know, chatty Gemini and enters the cardinal water sign, which is ruled by the moon, you know, and our feelings can become our superpower right now. It wants us to, you know, let our heart rule over our head said, logic can take more of a backseat while emotional intelligence gets a glow up. We can focus more on family life, our inner sanctuary, looking after our psychological and emotional traumas, nurturing ourselves and being open to that deep shadow work. We can want to nurture other people as well, even if you're not the mussy, touchy-feely, emotional, romantic side. You may want more romance with yourself and others right now. We can feel more defensive about our loved ones and our personal boundaries right now, and ultimately our emotional awareness, because the sun in Cancer is all about nurturing and emotional sensitivity, and it can increase our intuition and encourages us to tap into our inner feelings and connect with our emotions more deeply. It's a time where we can be more empathetic and understanding towards others as well as ourselves. The moon in Cancer controls emotions and our subconscious, and this can increase our nurturing instincts, and this can manifest as a desire to care for others, whether it's pets, our family or friends. It's a time when we can just feel more compassionate and supportive in our personal and professional lives. As I said, it can make us feel more vulnerable, and we have to see this as a positive thing, an opportunity to embrace, to vibe with, to be open to our emotional side and be more open and authentic to the right people, because we do know some people will take advantage of our openness. But ultimately, with those you can trust, allow yourself to be seen and understood for who you truly are, and this vulnerability can lead to deeper connections and a greater sense of belonging. In terms of the karmic and emotional meanings, it can make us want more emotional and psychological healing. It encourages us to confront our past wounds and traumas. It's a time to do the work and work through our feelings, whether they are joyful, sad or angry, and we don't need to try and categorize them, especially if you've got a lot of analytical energy like Capricorn Virgo energy in your chart. It's a time where you can just feel them, note them down without trying to think about why you feel. Instead of saying, why am I sad, think, just know I'm feeling sad, there's sadness in me right now. But for some of you, it is about getting down to the core issue of the reasons behind your emotions, but not for everyone, right? Sometimes it's just about feeling the emotion and letting it pass in its own time, and doing this lets you release old patterns and move forward with a lighter heart. Spiritually, it's about connecting with your intuition and inner wisdom, your higher self, trusting your instincts and removing the things in your life that stop you from listening to your heart and trusting your instincts. It can bring deep spiritual insights and an understanding of yourself and your place in your universe, and it's an opportunity to align your higher purpose and live in accordance, in line with your spiritual values, and it can just bring a deeper sense of belonging, and it wants us to look for, seek out and nurture our connections and relationships with others, and build or continue to build strong support networks with the different aspects of your personality, and by doing so, whether it's by finding physical support networks with friends, family and community groups, or by learning to integrate all different aspects of yourself and love on yourself, you can create a deeper sense of belonging and purpose. So esoterically, this energy brings a sense of the mystical and the unknown, encouraging us to explore our subconscious and the depths of our being. And the sun in Cancer can activate emotional archetypes, especially those of the caregiver, if we're using Jungian terms, and these are universal patterns and themes that resonate with our emotions, and it wants us to explore and understand archetypes and themes that repeat in our life, and this can help us see ourselves and others more clearly. It's a time to look into symbolism and the meaning behind our emotional experiences, So in summary, during this transit we are essentially in our feelings, but in the most empowered way. This isn't just about being emotional, it's about tapping into, working with, Cancer's incredible intuitive wisdom and protective strength. You know, ask yourself, which area of your life do you need more nurturing right now? How can I create a safer emotional container for myself and those I care about? And most importantly, what would happen if you allow yourself to be as sensitive as you naturally are, you know, without judging it as a weakness? On the 17th of July, Venus makes a quintile to Saturn and a quintile to Neptune. The moon enters void of course at 8:21 a.m. and the moon enters Aries at 11:09 p.m. and Mars makes a sesquiquadrate with Pluto at 11:54 p.m. So Venus's quintile to Saturn and Neptune happen when Venus is in Taurus and Saturn and Neptune's in Pisces, and Venus quintile Saturn is exact at 3:40 a.m. and Venus quintile Neptune is exact at 8:11 a.m. and they both last for 3 days, and Mars is sesquiquadrate to Pluto is exact at 11:53 p.m. and Mars is in Leo and Pluto's in Capricorn. So Venus's quintile to Saturn brings a grounded, adds to the grounding, actually the grounding energy of this week, and it brings a kind of transcendent energy, allowing us to go beyond ourselves and our problems, and it gives us permission to mix creativity with structure, with routine, you know, and it helps us to, you know, imagine, recreate, scope our dreams into reality, bring our dreams into reality. Again, it allows us to you know, look into aesthetics and express ourselves differently and be more on trend, but in a disciplined way, as I was saying at the beginning of the week, being ethical in our self-expression. You know, it's perfect for creating art that lasts or finding beauty in our day-to-day routines, the beauty and the extraordinary, and just feeling like great about just the simple things, brushing our teeth, having a sip of water, you know. And it wants us to and supports us in committing to doing what we love and committing to our routine, you know. But negatively, it can bring, you know, suffering our energy. If we're too inflexible, we may be torn between sensual indulgence, Venus in Taurus, and spiritual sacrifice, Saturn in Pisces. So the best use of this energy is to find balance between these, you know, indulging and sacrificing, creating a beauty ritual with staying power, you know, so start or continue that creative project that requires your patience, you know. It supports new ways at looking at how to meet our material needs and looking at our material values and beliefs, you know, and aligning them and making them kind of serve our spiritual goals, you know. So allowing the material values of Taurus, you know, that Taurus energy, second house energy, serve our spiritual goals, you know, Pisces 12th house energy. So yeah, Venus's quintile to Neptune again allows us to be creative, and it brings a mix of earthly pleasure once again and divine inspiration. It's given heaven and earth vibes, you know, higher meaning, feeling nice, feeling sexy, being able to be romantic, good for date night, sexual expression and all of that. It allows us to be more dreamy and romantic and open to romantic encounters and date nights and stuff, and we can become more sensitive and more in tune with ourselves and others, and inspired to bring our ideas into forming by doing, you know, doing the thing, writing that book, painting that picture, all of that, you know. But we just need to watch out for financial delusions or seeing people through rose-coloured glasses, as Pisces energy can always make us, you know, idealise situations and relationships. It can also make us overspend on things, you know. So the best use of this is to practice spiritual sensuality, think tantric practices or sacred beauty rituals, and allow yourself once again to do the things that make you happy, you know. So when the moon enters Pisces, we can connect with our warrior-like energy, and our emotional body is ready for new beginnings, you know. We're ready for that leap of faith, you know, and we have the emotional courage to act on our inspiration and our ideas, you know. It adds to us being able to be creative as well. Negatively, it can add to our frustration, and it can add to us being impatient and impulsive this week and overthinking, and this can lead to us not being able to make decisions as well. It's a good energy once again for daydreaming, meditation and focusing on our routine as well, and we can channel the fresh emotional energy that the moon in Aries brings into starting projects that we may have conceptualized, think about over the last month or so, or your life, you know. It's a good energy to start things with, that's what I'm saying. So Mars' sister quadrant to Pluto allows us again to, you know, go forward, but it's a tense aspect and it creates friction between our personal will and deeper transformative forces. Positively, it gives us unmatched determination and intensity, and it can allow us to push through barriers and our adversities. I talked about Saturn retrograde earlier this week, so this helps us overcome any blocks that brings, right, or any blocks in us meeting our goals in general, you know. And it basically allows us to, you know, mix creativity with strategic power and strategic planning, but negatively it can add to the power struggles that can come up this week, and ego conflicts, people saying I am better than you, my point of view is better, and all of that, and hidden anger can just explode out into the surface, because Mars in Leo wants recognition and Pluto in Capricorn demands surrender to deeper transformation and change, right? You know, the best use of this energy is to channel intense emotions into creative expression or physical activity. Use this energy to overcome obstacles through strategic action rather than, you know, using brute force, just being aggressive with your words or actions, you know. And it's perfect to step up and take leadership and to transform how you lead yourself and others. So you can ask yourself today, are you using your creative talents to build something long lasting, and is this what you're trying to build connected to your spiritual vision or your long-term vision for your life's direction, you know. And ask yourself how you can work with Aries moon, the fiery energy, and Leo energy, you know, to honor both your personal desires and the deeper transformation that your soul is calling for, you know, represented by Pluto in Capricorn, right? On the 18th of July, the moon enters its last quarter moon phase at 1:38. The moon's north node goes retrograde. Mercury goes retrograde as well, and I'm going to do a whole separate audio on that, so ain't you lucky? And Mercury makes a sextile to Venus as well, and Mercury's in Cancer and Venus is in Taurus. So the last quarter moon, Mercury retrograde and Mercury sextile Venus wants us to reflect and reconsider our journey, you know. The last quarter moon again wants us and supports us in letting go of the things that are getting in the way of our growth. It's basically telling us it's time to take out the astrological and other trash and supporting us to do so. It's a perfect energy to identify and discard, you know, let go of what's holding you back. It can create a tense inner friction between our past and future. It allows us to evaluate what the previous lunar cycle taught us, or, you know, our past life experiences have taught us. The moon's north node going retrograde intensifies our karmic lessons, our evolution, our growth gets put under a microscope. It's time to question if you're truly heading where your higher self wants you to go. So a lot of aspects this week, you know, as a pause and reflect, is guiding us to think about what our day-to-day habits are and whether they're in alignment with what we need to do to achieve our goals, right? And for some of you, our past life connections and soul contracts can become more visible through dream or self-reflection and stuff like that. You may just also be more in tune with how your past relationships are still influencing your life now, and it wants you to think about the psychological, emotional, spiritual patterns you need to break to move forward. And Mercury retrograde in Cancer is ultimately wanting to review our emotions and how we express our feelings. Old conversations with our family may come up again, and it can be toxic or good, or even if it is not good and toxic at the start, having these conversations, no matter how uncomfortable they are, can be good for you to move forward, you know. And also we can just be a bit nostalgic and sentimental, and this is when retrograde we can invite exes back into our life. And I believe exes are exes for a reason. Yes, that we can work out, and sometimes we have unfinished business where we may get back together with them for a period of time, but if you and the ex has always been breaking up, getting back together, breaking up, getting back together, sometimes you just have to break that cycle. You know, you have to ask yourself, is this ex, is this relationship that we create between us when we are together what I really want? Because sometimes we can love people to the cows come home, as we say in the UK, but if the proof's in the pudding, right, if when you two come together it's unhealthy, especially if it disrupts other people's lives, especially if children are involved, sometimes we have to put that love aside. Sometimes we have to love people from a distance, you know. Mercury sextile to Venus is, you know, Venus in its own sign is thriving. It allows us to speak with more pleasure and charm and grace, you know. So this can help us repair any problems we've had this week, or, you know, throughout, I don't know, the year or whatever. Just repair, it helps us to repair communication problems and have those deep conversations, you know. It also adds to us appreciating beauty and art, and creativity can provide a sanctuary for us, especially during this week of astrological confusion, you know. It helps us, supports us to, you know, solve those problems creatively, and it can again supports us with finding solutions to our financial and relationship issues. It's like having an astrological cushion during Mercury's backwards tumble, you know. Venus provides a stable central foundation whilst it's in Taurus, you know, while we reconsider the emotional patterns we need to let go of, which Mercury retrograde in Cancer wants us to do. So we can ask ourselves, how may releasing old emotional communication patterns open the doors to true relationship and moving forward in our life? And what past conversations do we need to go over, revisit before we can move forward? And most importantly, how can you use Venus's harmonious influence to soften the edges of these intense, you know, changes that some of you need to make this week? On the 19th of July, the Sun makes a square to Chiron at 1:49 p.m. The Moon enters void of course at 4:37 p.m. The Sun's power out of Venus is exact at 4:55 p.m. So the Sun square to Chiron happens when the Sun's in Cancer and Chiron's in Aries, and the Sun's power out of Venus happens when the Sun's in Cancer and Venus is in Taurus. And I talked about this is the energy that's been influencing us all this week, right? So as we close down the week, the Sun square with Cancer puts a spotlight on our need to protect and care for others, and the healing that we need to do around our self-empowerment and courage, you know. And it's basically like we're being asked, how can we truly nurture, take care of others in a healthy way if we haven't confronted our own need to stand up for ourselves, you know, and not people please and all of that. So it brings powerful awareness of how family patterns or relationship patterns may have wounded your sense of independence and taking care of yourself and empowering yourself. It gives us the energy to, you know, have some major breakthrough therapy, you know, and this is perfect for understanding how our nurturing instincts may actually be compensating for our fears around asserting our own needs, and a lot of codependent behaviours stem from us not being able to take care of our own needs when we were younger. So we believe that we could, you know, if we were nice to our primary caregivers who may have rejected us, then they would treat us better, and we could have created that pattern of, you know, being a parent to our parents sort of thing, you know. So he wants to look at what unhealthy patterns you have in your life and how you can overcome them. Negatively, triggers around family behaviours and your personal boundaries may come up and just make you feel drained. You may feel torn between caring for others and standing up for yourself, and wounds around your personal self-expression may make you feel raw and vulnerable, you know. So it's best to try and nurture yourself and look after yourself in healthy ways, and notice where you're over nurturing others at your own expenses, getting in the way of your self-empowerment. It ultimately creates the perfect tension for healing the parent-child dynamic within yourself, and looking after that inner child within yourself, as well. So ultimately this week brings to our attention the ways we may over nurture others and neglect ourselves. It asks us to look at where in our life may we need to establish, put in place better emotional boundaries while honouring your caring nature, because a lot of the time we want to care for people, right? Especially if you've got a lot of Cancer, maybe Libra, Pisces, even Scorpio energy, Taurus energy in your chart, nurturing energy in your chart. You may want to naturally do that, but it's unfortunate that some people take advantage of that, So looking into the ways that you can nurture yourself in the right ways, how you can sit with uncomfortable feelings rather than rushing to resolve them, asking yourself how can you heal your wounds around your self-empowerment in a healthy way, and think about how you can use the grounding energy of Venus and Uranus in Taurus this week, and Pluto in Capricorn, to help you love yourself through, healing any wounds around self-expression or any other wounds you may have this week that you're focusing on healing. So yeah, that's the end of the weekly scopes from the 13th to the 19th of July. I'm Amani, your holistic astrological life coach. Take care and see you next time.